Kyle here from All Media Reviews. So that's my basically intro. Kyle, All Media Reviews. So I guess I'll talk about the end of the Western Conference Finals, like a beginning and end in a quick time frame. Even though it seemed like it took a while before it started, but yeah, I have some other videos that I'm gonna start working on, but this is probably the last one. I don't know if I will be talking about. I don't foresee talking about the NBA playoffs, the finals necessarily. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the free agency stuff. Maybe. Anyway, so um, yeah. I mean, 5 games, and I haven't done a video since really after game two. I did talk about it a little bit. I think did I do a video? Maybe I didn't. So they had the all out thrashing in game three, but it was sort of a mirage or just a one off, unfortunately. Though game four, the Timberwolves, I mean, they had the turnovers, and there's a few points about that I'd like to say that hurt them. And the offensive rebounds, which the offensive rebounds were a problem in the Golden State series. I want to say even in parts of the Lakers series with they should not be allowing teams to get these offensive rebounds, but that's some of its effort. But rebounding, part of playing defense is rebounding, and I know the Wolves and Gobert. It's not just because Gobert's not always out there. Can and should be able to rebound, especially against teams that are smaller. But some of rebounding is just anticipation, spacing and position, especially position, and then understanding where the ball's going to go. Because Dennis Rodman led the league in rebounds and averaged over 20 a game a couple times, and while he's was like 6'9", he was outweighed by a lot of guys that he out rebounded easily. So, but yeah, they shot really well. The rest of the team, other than their two primary guys, Randall and Edwards. I mean, in Game Three, the whole team shot well, and I think it was kind of partially to do with Oklahoma City. They it's like it was a punch back, and they hadn't seen that side of the Wolves. The Wolves weren't playing zone. They just went man to man and just were aggressive and just came out lights out, really. Kind of similar to the way that they did in the first game against the Lakers, hitting threes and giving a lot of defensive effort. Their defense was effective, but Oklahoma City's like, well, we got too far behind. It's not worth trying to exert the effort to try to come back here. We're already up 2-1, 2-0. If we can win the next game, it doesn't matter that much. So, um, but I think part of it also is it shows that Oklahoma City can be beaten and can be beaten soundly if you can actually exploit their weaknesses. I didn't look that up, and I was mean to look that up. Man, maybe follow up or something like that. To look at the 14 losses they had, the two to the Timberwolves, but um, who beat them? Like, what teams gave them problems? Even the teams they beat that played them close. What kind of players did they have the most problems with? But unfortunately, that game four kind of just took the wind out of their sails after they didn't win it. I mean, the Wolves could not. They had the lead early in the game at points, but as a whole, the whole game was like they were trying to catch up, and it was just back and forth. And Oklahoma City wouldn't miss. They couldn't. Their defense was not that effective. Their half court defense, especially, even though they won all these categories, including points off turnovers, fast break points, and points in the paint. Um, their half court defense against Oklahoma City was not good enough in a sustained amount of time, despite the fact they had this really great performance from their bench guys, from Donte DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander Walker, especially. Yeah, I don't think Edwards played poorly in Game Four. He just basically deferred. I suppose part of it was that they needed to actually continue to rotate the ball, even though some of those guys, I don't know how many secondary assists, those they call hockey assists, a secondary assist in hockey, he would have had in game four. And he had like 5 or 6 assists, I want to say, but I think he probably could have had another 10. I don't know. You look at the basketball reference stats, where on those threes from a lot of those guys, not just Dante and Nas, it was Nas Reed a little bit too, but it was also Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels had a pretty effective game in. Hold on a second. What are you eating there? Cat just has a bit of a oral fetish. Um, Jaden McDaniels had a pretty effective game in Game 4 as well, but they just couldn't grab the lead. They kept on. It was like between 11. It was between like 4 and 11 points, or 3 and 11 points, or 5 and 11 points, or 5 and 12 points for probably the better part of the second half. And eventually they did tie it, but then they weren't able to take the lead. And they made one or two turnovers, but more of what I want to not forget is that the turnover numbers, that it wasn't just in this game, but some of the turnovers they would be counted for, I believe, are things like, moving screens, extended elbow on a screen, and offensive fouls. Because those are a turnover, just like getting the ball stolen or throwing the ball away. Even throwing the ball away isn't necessarily largely to do with the defense. But moving screens and offensive fouls oftentimes have really very little to factor in what the defense does. So yeah, they're like an unforced error in tennis, really. They're not. You want to praise the Thunder and their historic, unbelievable defense for forcing turnovers. But at least in that game, I don't know how many it was, but in several other games, several games throughout the playoffs, the turnover numbers the Timberwolves had, and a lot of teams have, at least a small fraction, or if not a fraction, some kind of fraction, are not due to the defense. They're due to the mistake of the offense. So you could say, well, indirectly, the defense still affects that, I guess, but um, I think that was part of it, is why they had that many turnovers. They still had some where they got steals and stuff, but it was, the Wolves pretty much left it all on the court in that game, and I think pretty much you say the good game and teams could come back and everything. I think if it was the opposite, where it was game 4 in Oklahoma City and they came back here for game 5, it might have helped, but based on what happened last year, it wouldn't have mattered. But, what happened last night in game 5, you know, coaching, the wear and tear, the endurance, the fatigue of long season, long playoff run. Anthony Edwards, there's something to be said about what he has gone through over the last 12 plus months, because they had last regular season, which was, they had this really great season, but obviously it took some of a toll on him. They had the best record they'd had since 2004. They won like 56 games or whatever, 57. And then the playoff run they had, and then he got spent and he was out of gas against Dallas. Then he was off for a few months, but then they did the Olympic team training and then the Olympics. Granted, he wasn't like playing the number of minutes, but he was still playing basketball. He didn't get to just kind of, take a break. Then they obviously had the training camp going into the season, the stuff with the training stuff, and then this whole season. So I think next year, not only because he's been through it, and his age, I suppose, in some ways his age being that he's a little older, and so he's just becoming more mature and maybe learning some things about his body at that age, and some of it because he's not going to have to go through the Olympic part of it. And actually, you think about the year before, leading to the last season, the 2022 23 24, he played in was it the FIBA World Cup or World Games? So he's had 2 summers straight where he was in some kind of competition where he needs to, like, just had to recharge his batteries and have a summer off entirely. Could pay some dividends and make a difference next year. But the thing is, you look at what happened in 2024 in the Mavericks series, and in game 5 specifically, even, and this year in the series against Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. And it's just in game 5. It's like deja vu. Even though they were in Oklahoma City, you know, I think if they had won game 4, talking earlier to someone about this. They'd won game 4 and then gone to Oklahoma City, and the same thing would have happened, or they would have lost at least, and then they would have lost either in game 6 or game 7. Um, I'd feel a little bit better in how they kind of have progressed in that. But you look at this Western Conference Finals against Oklahoma City, you look at the Western Conference Finals last year against the Mavericks, even though they had the home court, they really didn't improve all that much. They had the one blowout game, I guess, but that I guess to some degree they had Terrence Shannon Jr. versus Kyle Anderson, and but their defense is probably a slightly better. I don't know which team is better. Um, I think overall, I still think the 2014 was slightly better because they had a little more swagger. That Denver series especially showed it. Um, but man, they beat Denver 4 times this year, and then they end up beating Oklahoma City twice, including without those guys missing and stuff. I don't know. I think it's coaching with Finch. They didn't play Terrence Shannon Jr. and or TJ as he's being known as, and um, Jalen Clark maybe enough, probably enough throughout the whole series. That's a coaching thing. The rest thing though doesn't seem to factor that much because they had more rest going into the Golden State series, which they won, but they lost the first game, and they had more rest than Oklahoma City. Now that's sort of negated with Oklahoma City, given the fact they play like 9 or 10 players, so their fatigue, their endurance, even though it was grueling against Denver, it wouldn't be as grueling if they had a shorter bench, I suppose. But um, I don't know. I mean, it's just that whole, the history heartbreak, the Minnesota sports failures. It's you assume it will happen, and I just think, and factoring in Oklahoma City, you know, one of the lowest payrolls in the league and one of the youngest, if not the youngest team. Um, if they win this year, and I'm not no certainty they do win because I still think there's a chance probably Indiana, likely Indiana, at least gives them a tough series, a tougher series in some ways. If not, finds a way to beat them. Because all the pressure's still on Oklahoma City. Um, but there'll be a target on their back if they win. But they're like, well, they're so young, and the way they play, and they play they have so many players deep. I don't know. I mean, I, I think it will be interesting next year to see teams really, it's not like Boston this year. Some of those other teams get up to play them and see how they really like it because people are going to go after them. They may not finish with even 60 wins next year. They still could win the West, though. That's the downside. And the thing is, we're thinking about this for almost a year now. They talked about expansion. If the NBA and likely will expand at some point in the next few years, Seattle will get on their team. I feel for the Seattle fans seeing Oklahoma City win because that should be their team. Even though the Durant, Harden, Westbrook team I actually liked and wanted to see them beat LeBron. But Seattle and like probably Las Vegas coming in will be in the Western Conference. They will move probably 2 teams to the Eastern Conference. One of them could be the Timberwolves. Now, one of them could be Oklahoma City. Geographically, it probably makes more sense to move either New Orleans or more likely Memphis. Which I don't really love Memphis either. John Morant, he's a great player, but he's got a lot of issues. Now, if he were to come to the Timberwolves, I don't think it's going to happen, but if they were to find a way to get them, that would be the sort of duo that the Timberwolves would need, where you could really draw the defense and isolate. They need a really quick, imposing, offensive, demanding, shot making and driving guard. That could just, I mean, if Rob Dillingham had progressed, if this is Rob Dillingham potentially 3 or 4 years from now, as long as his like 5'10", 5'11" frame height doesn't be his detriment. If he can be like Allen Iverson, like a poor man's even Allen Iverson, that could potentially be that guy because that's one of the biggest thing. Conley can't play that much against Oklahoma City. You need a guard that's super quick. Now I don't know. You wouldn't say Halliburton's necessarily super quick. He has a quick shot though, but I think a really quick guard would give Oklahoma City fits. Last year it happened with Dallas with Kyrie Irving. You can say, well, Oklahoma City's better this year. Yeah, big deal. That doesn't mean anything. A really, really quick, excellent ball handling guard would give Oklahoma City would negate their defense. Um, but I don't know. We'll see. I just think that there's something to be said about the West will get better. Probably some of these teams. The Lakers might get better. The Spurs, assuming hopefully Wemby will be healthy. That whole thing is just really sad to learn. Um, and they have the second pick too, and the Mavericks. Cooper Flag. Well, I'm not really sold on him at this point, especially next year. But I'm not sure how long Irving's going to be out even. But some of these other teams in the West, if the Wolves move to the East, and Oklahoma City did not. Though they might have a better chance to make the finals. The worst they would if Oklahoma City has this sort of extended, sustained um, dominance or just you know untouchable team, they would the Wolves got to the finals, then they might would have to play them. But there's still the teams in the East that are good, like Cleveland and Boston and Indiana for that matter. But I don't know. It just it you just and Anthony Edwards, is he really the whole thing about 23 years old versus this is his fifth season? If he was coming, even if he came out 1 year early, like what used to happen 20 to 25 years ago, a lot of guys would go to college for they'd go for 2 or 3 years. He would be 27, 28 right now. So somewhere in the middle there. But you say, okay, well, he has more of a ceiling because he's still that young. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know if I mean like at a mid range game, he would hit that turnaround bank shot last year and the year before. He stopped doing it. Um, foul baiting that this BS with SGA and some of these other guys, Harden going back. I don't know if he wants to add that, but I think he would probably. It's almost a little bit like Garnett, but he's a better scorer than Garnett. In that, if he had another primary scorer, even a like a primary number one scorer on the team, or it's like 1A, 1B, where the two of them basically averaged almost 30 a game apiece or 25 to 30. And then you have to have complementary guys. Jaden McDaniels potentially could score even more than he did this year, but his offensive has gone up. I think he's got potentially more ceiling with that. But assuming they don't because if Tim Conley trading Cat, I don't think anyone's untradeable other than Edwards probably at this point. But it'd be great to keep Jaden McDaniels. But if they somehow do keep Randall, I think the odds are lower. Randall would be best as a third scoring option, and I don't know if that works for his sort of personality and the way he plays. He has to get used to playing in the system with another player. And someone like Giannis, sure, he would draw the defense. I don't think they can afford him, but they're talking about like Garland. Would they have to trade Garland from Cleveland, their point guard who averages like 20 a game? I don't think he would be the primary scorer necessarily with Ant, but someone like Kyrie Irving, not Irving himself, but they need someone like that who could score as much, if not more, than Ant regularly. And then a third scorer. So kind of the triple-headed thing that um, that would give a team like Oklahoma City's defense problems. It still would be hard to beat them, but I don't know. We're gonna see if the Pacers probably will win tonight. And well, they have Halliburton. They're a little bit like I mentioned in that other video. They're a little bit like Oklahoma City in that they're more about an ensemble cast as opposed to primary guys. Halliburton's their best player. He was on the Olympic team too. Um, but I don't know. I wouldn't pick if that's the matchup. I wouldn't pick Indiana to win at this point. But um, it's just frustrating because I think the way the modern NBA is, the opportunity to have a dynasty is pretty unlikely. The Warriors really might be the last dynasty. It's really more about parity in the way unless they change things with the second apron and being able to sign guys and the trading makes it more difficult. I don't know. Unless you have some kind of freak. If Wembanyama becomes this unbelievable offensive force, which he potentially could. I mean, he can hit the three. He's just unguardable, and his stamina and his health obviously holds up. That team, I could potentially see they have De'Aaron Fox. Although I don't know if he played with them. I think he was already here at the point they traded for him. But um, and they have the second pick. If you surrounded him with one or two other big name guys, and then a little more depth on defense, this is like Duncan 2.0, which is again cringeworthy because that nightmare we had with Garnett, which they never could beat Duncan. They could never beat the Spurs really, and the Lakers, but only the 1 year they beat the Spurs in the division. At least I would say I understand that because it's this guy who is an absolute freak, a freak of like nature. Whether his body holds up, his knees hold up, and everything. This whole unfortunate situation with a blood clot, which I can relate, blood clots, but that I could at least understand. The way that Oklahoma City is made up, They just have a bunch of good players. They have one like outstanding star. I know Jalen Williams was an All Star this year. They have a few guys that did make first team All Defense. That Dort guy. I just still contend the way they play defense though. It's smothering, and they get away with more than they should be able to get away. They play the 9 or 10 guys, and that's to their credit. That's a strategy that more teams should have. The Wolves could potentially do that. Memphis did that when they were good this year, especially. As much as I can't stand John Morant in some ways, and their team were annoying when they lost in 2022 to play. That strategy, is a proven thing that can work. And but from a standpoint of like their players and their talent, and like and also from an entertainment. I mean, this is secondary, but from an entertainment value standpoint, fun to watch, able to watch. Watching the Wolves play them was almost painful. It was like this is just hard to watch, not necessarily purely to do with the fact the scores were what they were, but just watching their style play and watch them just. It's like rugby. Why don't we just go out there and play rugby? You know, this is like football. This is American football. This is soccer or European football. You can just crowd them and surround them and just. I mean, it is a little bit like the Pistons from the 2000, more so the 2000, the late 80s Pistons, but 2004 Pistons. It's like, and slapping at the wrist and slapping at the ball and, beyond the flopping, the crap that John, Shea gets away with on offense. I've talked, and I'm not the only, tons of people have talked about this. It's not, it's beyond the fact of his talent. It's just his style. I'm going to push you away. I'm going to push you away. I'm going to hook you so I can have room for my arm. You can't do that. That's not how basketball was called and played. And and this is going to be their MO. Unless they change the rules or something happens. No, take Shea away from Oklahoma City. They have this deep roster still. Although it'd be interesting to see them play without him. Chet Holmgren's a different story. Again, I think he's more of a poor man's Wembanyama, but he's from Minnesota, though. No certainty about this, but I wouldn't be surprised at some point he'd want to come play here. And certainly because Gobert's not going to be here that much longer, probably they could totally use him. But not right now. It'd be probably a few years. He's got like a rookie contract, so this is his second year. He's got at least one, maybe 2 more years on it, but then they'll probably try to re-sign him. I don't know if he gets like they'd be able to sign him for the max, as long as they don't go over the cap based on the restrictions. But he may eventually. I'm talking 5 to 10 years from now end up here. Now maybe he's sort of peak of his play won't be at that peak at that point. I don't know, which would suck, but he's from here. I wouldn't be surprised if part of him that whole thing where it's like I beat my home team. But we'll see. And ultimately, will Ant actually stay here? We've seen this before, and we continue to see it where other players that are talented here go to other teams and they win. Just the way it is. We're just a breeding ground for other players. David Ortiz and how many other guys? How many other guys end up winning Super Bowls? And World Series and didn't Torrey Hunter went to the World Series? I think may have gone there with I forget. Anyway, so that's my take on the we'll see what they do in the offseason with that draft pick. There's this guy named Cedric Coward that looked really. But the thing is, he's like a 6'5" long guard. I mean, he's a little bit like Jaden or. I mean, if he's really good defensively, I still wouldn't necessarily eliminate them drafting him. But they've got 4 guys between Jalen Clark, TJ or Terrence Shannon Jr. And yeah, I mean, you put Ant in that same category and Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, they really need that many guys. They need a ball handler and they need someone else in the interior, and they're going to be able to keep Randall and Nas Reed. It's very possible both those guys are gone, and they end up, or Rudy's gone, and those 2 guys are there, and they're going to get someone new. I don't know. Maybe they could go after Walker Kessler, guy they drafted, or they may draft someone at 17. But fortunately, when you get a guy at 17 who's a big man, likely it's going to could be some time. Now look at Chet Holmgren, but I don't know. We'll see. But that's my spin on this, and see how the Twins do, and looking for the French Open's going on. I've been watching a little bit here and there. Um, been watching, but the U.S. Open's in a few weeks at I think it's Oakmont, I think in New York maybe, or forget where. Um, and then all this stuff happens, of course. Then we got and the Lynx are playing; they're undefeated. Maybe they'll win. Maybe they'll finally win. But anyway, that's it for that. I'm gonna try to do today's Thursday. A review of the Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens documentary that's on HBO. I don't know if I'll be able to have time to do that now. Maybe we saw it last Friday. Um, and there was one or two other things I was thinking about, but I'm like 340 some songs on my list. I mean, it's like published thing. I think I may try doing a video of sorts, just kind of reading off some of them. Um, it'll be, epic, but and then maybe I'll just try going back to the A to Z again. And there's of course there's some new releases coming up for music and the Deer Hunter, though it's just been and mid-year stuff, of course, is coming up. It's been kind of a sparse last month and change has been sparse, been like very limited. Thank goodness I discovered Jake Allen because it's like music I want to listen to, but yeah, I have some more stuff I'm gonna do. I don't know, my whole plans for like, the podcast and stuff and trying to finish some of these project stuff. We'll see. I may try just doing some of the movies of the year at some point. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.